Good morning, Saturday morning, hurtling towards the end of May. We've almost done M. May is almost ditched, bagged and over. So I hope you're all well. M for M. A little bit late in starting this morning. It was challenging to get out of bed. Saturday morning, I'd have liked a little lie in. Good morning, Faye Taylor, I hope you're well. And here we are, up at the falls. Morning, Francis. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone is well on this fine Saturday morning. I'll give you a few more seconds of this beautiful waterfall before we start our wandering and blethering. A wee bit of banter on a Saturday morning. So there we go, look at that tree. Good morning, Wally. Here we go, Willie's just private messaged me, which I can't answer unfortunately. There we go, new Lanark. Hey wee Ralph. Are we ready to do this? Ralph, are you? Yeah, Daddy, let's go then. Good morning. And yesterday I finished up and had a brain fart. I couldn't think about. Morning, Caroline. I had a brain fart and couldn't think of something for M and asked people, and I got people sent me messages for mortality and mindfulness and meditation and mindset, and there's actually hundreds of things for M. Good morning, sir. You doing well?
No
Aye,
bad,
good man, enjoy. There's a few boys just in front of you. Right, okay, so mindfulness and how to train the brain to be more successful. How to train the brain to be more compassionate, how to train the brain to install new programs of behaviour which are more beneficial than destructive. So, mindfulness, easy to talk about that for me, and so we'll start with that. But what I found really interesting doing these alphabet of emotion and mental health challenges and things to improve our mental health, it's been such a wonderful journey. It's been an amazing journey to see how loneliness is linked to mindfulness, and how D for depression is linked to loneliness, and how C for codependency has traits of everything running through it. And so we've progressed through it. We've progressed through this little story each morning that I've committed to do, and how they're all so closely related to one another. So anyway, here we are. We're going to talk about mindfulness. And what is mindfulness? The power of now, being present with ourselves, living in the moment, all of that kind of stuff. Which is really hard, isn't it? It's really hard if you've ever tried to practice it, because our monkey mind just chatters all the time. Morning, Harvey. The monkey mind just chatters all the time. Chatters away constantly. We get constantly distracted. In fact, a Harvard study shows that somewhere between 40 and 57% of our time is spent not being present. And 57, let's go with the best possible scenario, 40%. That's 40% of your life that you're actually missing out because you're living in the past, or you're away thinking about the future, and you're not actually here in this moment. That's 40% of your life. So for me, that would be 22 years of my life so far I have spent not being present. I would probably say that I'm closer to, if they were to study me, they would probably find that I spent 57% of my time not being present, right? Living in rumination, thinking about the past, right? Completely not helpful. Right, so mindfulness. Okay, now let's cast our mind back to some of the earlier chats that we had. Morning, Pamela. That was a nice message. Morning, Karine McLeod. I hope you're well up in Stornoway, and I hope you're still looking out for something up there for me, because I am bolting. I'm heading to the islands. Anyway, here we go. Mindfulness. Let's cast our mind back to the, earliest moments of development. Okay, so every single one of us that are here right now are all completely unique. Fingerprints, dental records, whole 9 yards. We're all completely unique, but we all share exactly the same story. We all began our journey here as a sperm from our father and an egg from our mother. And why are you scratching your head going, what's this got to do with mindfulness? Because really, in order to figure out mindfulness, you have to figure out the full complexity of our makeup, okay? So we then became fertilised, became a blastocyst, a zygote. We made a transitional period in gestation and trimesters, and we came to this world already primed for a world of which our mother was experiencing electrochemically, right? So we already had a story, not necessarily a baggage, but a primed magnet to be drawn to experiences which were similar to that of which the mother had been experiencing electrochemically. So it's not that our DNA was primed, it was almost that we have a susceptibility to be drawn towards certain behaviours, personality types, experiences of which we experienced ourselves for the first 9 months in utero. Then we come to this world, and as I said, from 0 to 7, look into all this stuff yourself. You're in what's called a hypnagogic trance, and you are very susceptible to programming, and the programming of which you've experienced from your environment in the early years of your development, right? Okay, so that all gets logged in the subconscious, unconscious, and even non-conscious aspects of our mind. Now, as you're listening to this, you're breathing. Do you think about breathing? Do you think about blinking your eyes? No, that's programmed at a very deep level in your brain that appears that it's beyond conscious thought. So let's just imagine that other things that you're unaware of. Now, what I'm asking you to do is go from the world being flat to the world being round, to even perhaps going back to thinking that the world's flat again, right? Very, very difficult concepts to try and wrap your head around when you've been programmed for so long to believe that that's what it is. But you're not thinking about breathing right now, okay? You're just doing it, right? So what if other programs and patterns of behaviour were installed in the program around about a similar time, right? At a non-conscious level, right? Then you've got stuff that's programmed at unconscious levels and subconscious levels of the mind. And these are what's called old scripts, old schemas and narratives that we start living our life by. Okay, we start living our life by these unconscious, subconscious programs and scripts and schemas. So when Harvard done a study on mindfulness and the ability to be present, non-present, and how much time the brain, not the person, how much time the brain spends thinking about the past, it's somewhere between 40 and 57% of our time. So what's really shown up in that study here is that our brain spends most of its time not actually being present, which means it's living in the past, right? So why is mindfulness then important? Now, mindfulness is important because fundamentally, mindfulness is quite a trendy word now, isn't it? Went through a wee phase there, didn't we, that everybody wanted to be apart from a yoga teacher, a mindfulness trainer. I sound as if I'm really slagging them, I'm not. Now, the brain, we only found out 25, 30 years ago that it's got a thing called neuroplasticity, which means actually what you pay attention to grows. What you practice grows. What you pay attention to grows. Now imagine in those first 7 years of your life that you spent every minute that you had playing football, playing keepy-uppy, honing that skill, right? You're putting that in. You're programming that game of keepy-uppy or football or golf. The earlier that you start something, right, and that you're able to install those programs at a very early age, the better at that activity you are going to become than, let's say, you started training when you're 30 as opposed to 3 months old. So really mindfulness is about bringing the power back to yourself and training your brain to have more effective outcomes than ineffective outcomes. Now, mindfulness has now scientifically been proven to assist in loneliness, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, dealing with shame, blame, judgment. Now, as you start to embark on your journey of mindfulness, I feel it's important that it's the intention that you go towards the mindfulness with. Now, if you're sitting in a mindfulness stroke meditative practice and you're judging yourself for not being able to do it, and then you're judging everybody in the room, and then you start to judge people for the way they are, and you start to judge the monks, and you start to judge the teacher, and you start to judge the lecturer, you're not actually being mindful. You're sitting there in a state of judgment. And as we've said, what you focus on grows. I absolutely wholeheartedly believe that what you focus attention on grows, right? So if you're sitting ruminating about a problem, or you're sitting thinking about the anxiety, as I said yesterday, it looks like narcissism, because it's very, very selfish that the mind has been focusing on, as I've spoke about all week, the mosquito bite. The mind is continually going to the mosquito bite, and it's almost like there's a part of our mind is fighting us to stop us becoming present. Now, if you look at the brain structures of people that are highly stressed, high stress means that you're not present, right? So the amygdala in the brain, right, almond-shaped little dude thing that lives in the middle of the brain. If you stuck rods through your eyes and a rod through your ears, where the rods meet in your brain, you've got these two little dudes called amygdala, right? Those amygdalas are associated with, for an example, fight, flight, and freeze, and memory, and all this complicated stuff, right? But if you're stressed out your mind, the amygdala has scientifically been proven to be smaller, whereas in meditators, the amygdala is bigger, right? Now, when you're looking through the world through a lens of stress, you've got increased epinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline, etc., 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 right? Now, that's you living in a constant state of fear. So that fear could now be an unconscious state of fear, and you're focusing your attention on that fear, which means that fear then starts to grow, right? So I'm jumping about a little bit here, but last night, or yesterday afternoon, I took the bike out a run, and I was thinking about this morning, I was thinking about mindfulness and meditation and mindset, and one of the things that Carol had sent me to talk about was mortality. So I was thinking about all that as I was out on the bike, and I was like, how are they all interconnected? And this is a theory that I come up with. I'm not saying there's any truth in this, because I haven't studied it, I've not done a research paper on it. It was just a thought that came to my mind last night, right? So mindfulness and mortality, how can they be interconnected, I thought, as I was out on my bike. So I'm going to put this theory to you to munch over, digest, think about, right? Mortality, dying, okay? Are you scared of dying? Do you talk about dying? Do you talk about death? Do you celebrate death? You know, do you live in Varanasi and you see bodies floating down the Ganges and being burned at the side of the street since you were 6 or 7 years old? Or were you, when you were little, probably 13, and a family member died, did your mother and father just keep quiet about it, no talk about it, bury their feelings about it? You weren't allowed to go to the funeral. It was this almost taboo subject. Oh, it's too young. The Wayne's too young to go to that. Yeah, you go to countries like Africa, Eastern countries like India, Vietnam, Thailand. Death is actually celebrated. Death is something that's spoke about. Right? So if you've just tuned in, why is he babbling on about mortality, death, and mindfulness? Now, what I'm suggesting here is what I was thinking about is, are you scared of dying? Well, I'm not now, right? I'm definitely not now. And I would probably say that could be close to 100%. I am now in a state where I have made a complete peace with my death, and I know that it's going to happen. And it's not that I'm looking forward to it, but I really don't. I'm not scared of it. But I know that I spent a lot of my life sort of in a constant state of fear around dying. So the question that I'm asking people to think about is, are you scared of dying? Right? Do you talk about death? You know, how easy was it for you to do your will? Have you done a will, or have you avoided that? Are you doing all the things that you really want to do? Or are you consumed by fear? So let's just imagine that, whatever your answer is, unless you're going to text me in, that you're scared of death. Now, where was that fear of death? Where was that fear of death installed? Right? Because you weren't born with that fear. That was a program that somewhere in your development you have installed. So let's just say that program for fear of death, like so many other things that you've got which causes distractions in being mindful between this 40 and 57%, let's just imagine that fear of death is a quiet radio that's playing in a room, one of the rooms within your mansion we'll call your mind. But you can hardly hear it. In fact, you cannot hear it from the room that you're inhabiting. But it's always there, right? So you've got a fear of death. And that's going on at some level in the cortical regions of your brain, and it's going on down there, right? So if what we're focusing on grows, and we're focusing on fear, then we're going to live in a paradigm of fear. If we focus on love and connection, we're going to experience more love and connection. So a conversation that I had last night when I came back in my bike was with my new next door neighbours. Absolutely gorgeous couple, lovely couple. And we ended up having this really philosophical, put the worlds to right conversation that somehow steered on to talking about this. Now, how I've tried to interpret the God and the devil story, right, is almost like two forces. It's almost like God is a force of love and the devil is a force of fear, right? Now, we started talking about this COVID pandemic and, you know, how life's changed and, you know, conspiracy theories, and we just did 2 hours of sitting at the front in the sunshine chattering away. Now, the theory that we come up with was, whatever you look at grows. Now, if, for an example, you're in a place of compassion, a place of giving, a place of love, a place where you feel free and confident and you're focusing on that, and the people that you have in your life are mutually giving, equality, they're into a good life, etc., etc., that's who you start to see. Now, if you're taking heroin, robbing old grannies, breaking into houses, spending your time in apartments with the curtains drawn, full of shame, trying to hide your addiction, affliction, you're trying to hide your alcoholism, you're choosing times to disappear and isolate yourself from your family and your friends so that you can get intoxicated, become numb, and practice these very selfish, self-centred activities, right? Let's just imagine that that's a lower frequency, that's a lower vibration of behaviour. And I really don't like measuring things as lower and higher, but it's a different frequency, shall we call it, of behaviour. Now, if you're focusing on that, that's what will start to grow because of the neuroplasticity in the brain. What you start to focus on grows. So let me go back the way a bit. So when I said if we've got this fear of death around mortality, around our mortality, and that constant fear of death is niggling, how present can you be? How can you fully immerse yourself in the present moment, stood and embodied in this moment in time, that this is all there ever is and all there ever will be, and you're able to stand in that, and your mind's being pulled, but you're not going to have it forever, because you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die. You've not achieved enough for your life. Look at what they've achieved. Constant comparisons, constant judgments, right? And look at all the foundations and all the bricks that are layered on top of a singulate fear. And then you've got another fear about something else, and there's loads of bricks built up on top of that. So, mindfulness, mortality. How can one be truly mindful if there is a constant pull from fears and judgments that you have in yourself? Who am I to be doing this? And also underneath it all is shame, that major debilitating component that I bang on about all the time, how shame is constantly pulling us out of being present, right? So what you focus on in your mind starts to grow. Now, if you look at, how can I say this? Right, 20 days ago, I recommitted to doing these morning vlogs. I made a decision not to shave, and I do an 8-mile walk, and then I meet up with some guys and we do some cold water exposure, or as I like to call it, wild swimming, because everybody's jumped on the Wim Hof bandwagon right now. okay? Not that I'm slagging it, because it's absolutely fantastic, and I think Wim's stuff's absolutely incredible, right? I'm friendly with a guy, Darren, who does it religiously every day, and the benefits that I've seen in him is absolutely incredible, so I'm not slagging it. But what I'm about to say is this. As a leader, if you are a leader, right, whether that's a leader in business, whether that's a leader in meditation or mindfulness, or you're a coach, or a counsellor, or a psychotherapist, or a doctor, the power that you have in that position is very, very, very important, right? Now, if, for an example, at the moment, Wim Hof, cold water exposure, a lot of people know about that, right? A lot of people know about that behaviour. Now, if you wanted to manipulate a market, like stocks and shares and economy, you would go and get into something and start to practice something that's already gained popularity through the masses, so that then you can skim the cream off the top of the milk all the time. Now, it's been in my transient journey of personal development. I, for my 21st birthday, got a weekend to train in Reiki, right? So it was Reiki. And then, so that would have been what age? 93 or something like that, right? And then in 96, I did my Reiki 2 in India. In 98, I did my Reiki 3 in India. And I never really did anything with it. I never ever said I was a Reiki master. And I actually really rejected that term, master, right? Now, that then gained popularity. Now, had I wanted to be manipulative, manipulate the market and get the cream of the crop, then I would have presented myself as being into Reiki. Now, again, I'm not saying that Reiki's not great. It's a fantastic thing. It's an excellent sharing and a way of sharing and caring and inviting other people in. But if you're the Reiki master in the room, you're the one with the power. And I have heard such utter nonsense in that community that people are able to say, oh yes, I do now angelic. So there's now angelic Reiki, right? Nonsense, just let's add another layer, let's put another band on the top of it. And then they say, you will reap the benefits for about 21 days from this. Have you studied that? Do you have any evidence of that? How do you have evidence of that? Where are you making that very bold statement from? And they just stand there looking at you. Now, why I'm going along with this is to be very mindful of the leaders of which you are following. Because if you are following a leader, you are susceptible. We are all susceptible. The fragility of the human psyche is so fragile that we have been getting played through advertisements. I mean, I'm the world's worst. I see some for something, I've got to go and buy it. Or I see somebody with something and you've got to have it, because we're so vulnerable and so susceptible. So this is why it's majorly important to think about the leaders of which you are following. Now, in a position of leadership, should you be in a position of leadership and banging on about socialism versus capitalism, or hating Trump, or hating Corbyn, or hating this guy Cummins, or whatever it might be, right? Now, back to the Wim Hof thing. So, in February 2019, I toddled off down to London to spend a day with Wim Hof and getting myself into an ice bath and all the rest of it. Now, my journey, as I've said, my first all-nighter going to a rave and getting full of psychedelic substances was 1989, right? And I partied pretty hard from 89 to 93. So I went to a few all-nighters. I went to a few parties, right? So I've done that kind of rave scene, club scene kind of vibe. I rather hung my feelers up when it became a bit clubby and everybody started going to the tunnel. But that's a whole other story, right? So, and I've spent many years chasing gurus and personal development nonsense all around the world. And then in February last year, I toodles off to Wim Hof, and there was a whole band of people, a whole age of people in Speedos doing this kind of tribal dance to Wim Hof's commands, right? And I just thought to myself, I don't want to be amongst us. I definitely don't want to be part of a tribe, right? I've got a tribe. I don't need another tribe. But what I could have done was I could have then used that now name of popularity and branding to have put myself out there and continued my training with Wim Hof and gained the cream that was going about at the top. Right, so as a leader, you have to be very, very careful about what it is that you are enticing your audience towards. So, I've been jumbling about a little bit here, but mindfulness. In actual fact, as leaders, as professionals, as people and figures in authority, what would be the most important thing to utilise your power in guiding people to become? Well, mindful, present in this moment. Because anything else is just a distraction. Whether that's conspiracy theories that trumps a narcissistic twat, and all these other massive amounts of theories that are going on right now. Every single one of them demands something from you, and it's your attention, not intention, right? And every time you look at that, ask yourself, does it fill my heart with love, or does it fill my heart with division? Does this theory that I am listening to promote oneness, or does it promote separation? As I'm listening to these stories, am I getting pulled towards a place of oneness which fills me with peace? It fills my heart with joy. It creates connection. It makes me feel like I belong. Or does it push me into a subculture of people that have got the right answer, they've got righteousness, they've got understanding? So how do you start to train your brain to become more present? So if we lift our attention from the old scripts and schemas and we focus on our breath and pull our attention into just being here and begin to strengthen the connections and the neural networks in the brain and the synaptic firing and where it wires, it fires, and we start to bring our attention to the breath and here and the sounds that you're hearing and the birds and how it feels in your feet walking and how it feels being surrounded by nature, and you start to hone that skill, you will change your brain through neuroplasticity. And what will happen is you will come up to, so rather than, let's just say those old scripts and schemas are coming from a very ancient, primitive, primordial part of our brain, which could be anything from 60,000 years old to 300 million years old, right? But the minute that you start to focus on your breath and bring your attention to thought and letting it go, you will bring yourself and your attention up to the left occipital, which would be here for there, but that's my right, but this is your left. The left occipital and the prefrontal cortex, right? You will change your brain from looking at the default mode network, DMN, right? Because your default mode network is now what's running the show. Now, if that's what's running the show and you're experiencing anxiety, stress, and pressure, right? Look at the amount of external stimuli that you are giving your attention to. Now, as you step into being more mindful, into a place of mindfulness, it's extremely important to do it with the correct intention. Because if you're sitting in a state of mindfulness in judgment, anger, and shame, and you're being mindful, you are then increasing only judgment, anger, and shame. So entering mindfulness from a heartfelt sense of compassion, right? And you start to channel your attention and intention to kindness and letting go of thoughts and even beginning to laugh at how much you are ruled by your past and thoughts and how you think about something. What's your mind? You start to think. It's like one of those Google search links, isn't it? You start off looking, and then there's a blue highlighted bit, and you click that, and you started looking for like a new pair of ladders, and the next thing you know, you're researching chronic illnesses. It's crazy. But what is that? So we have got in our society a massive increase in what's called attention deficit disorder or hyperactivity disorder, ADD and ADHD. Now, for me, the core, the explosion in that word is deficit. We are in a deficit society. We are in a financial deficit. You are spending more than you are bringing in. You are in a deficit. Are you hungry for love and connection and oneness? Do you look at your partner and want desperately to connect with them, but can feel disconnection from them? Are you terrified to step towards them and expose your nakedness and vulnerability? Is there one part of your mind desperately wants that, yet a bigger part of your mind is holding you back, and you've just become two complacent people sitting on the couch channel flicking, right? Pulling your attention back and starting to accept and look at the deficit that we have. We have a deficit of connection in our society. We have a deficit of understanding. We have a deficit of love. We have got a financial deficit globally right now that's probably into tens of trillions of pounds stroke dollars, right? We are in a massive deficit. Our children are in a deficit. They are starving for connection. They are starving to be seen. And it only takes you to put your phone down for 2 minutes and look up and acknowledge the wee dance that they're performing for you, or the wee joke that they're telling, or how they're desperately, desperately hungry and trying to get you to listen to them, right? Mindfulness. Put the stuff down that's not working, right? Look at your leaders. Are your leaders tribally? It's like the war on drugs campaign, right? And it's like these people that are out fighting for peace. Oh God, I remember I was in London about 25 years ago, probably longer, and I saw these activists, and on their sign it said fighting for peace. And I looked at it and just scratched my head and was like, I don't get that. Why would you fight for something that's loving? It's just bizarre. People want to create subsections all the time and want to enforce their belief systems on you. I'm going to ask myself when I hang up this, am I enforcing my belief systems on anybody? Or am I don't know. I really don't at this moment. But when I hang up, I'm going to think about that. Am I enforcing my belief systems on anybody? And the way that I rationalise it to myself, I have spent years in the darkness through one particular behaviour or another. I have spent years in those flats with the curtains drawn and the sun coming up and you're like, oh no, you're like a vampire getting blinded by the light. I've came through high levels of drug use, erratic, chaotic behaviours. I have suffered from depression for many years. And when you come out of that and you're able to live in the light and actually enjoy the experiences that you have, and you don't need very much, it's such a wonderful place to be. It really is. It's an awesome, awesome place to live. I love it. I really do. I'm so grateful for that. And you get to a point where you're grateful for, you start to become grateful, and you can't have happiness and mindfulness without gratitude. And simple things I'm grateful for now. A shower. I love showering. Like before, I just used to get in, get washed, get out. I can stand in a shower now for 10 minutes. I absolutely love it. I've got a great shower now, right enough, but nonetheless, love that. Love walking my dog. It's like owning your own real life cartoon character. It's like when I go out walking with him in the morning and I get to just watch his wee legs and his wee waddle and his wee behaviours and his wee things. It just absolutely love it, right? So I give myself more of those kind of things. And, you know, when we start on any programme of commitment, and I started to say that 20 days ago I committed to do these blogs. We've got to M, we've worked our way through from A. It's like I'm doing 20 minutes on that every day. Do I find it hard? Yeah. There's a part of my mind trying to say, Ross, don't bother, have a day off, don't bother doing it, right? I've also 20 days ago stopped shaving. 20 days ago we started going in the Clyde. Now there's a number, and each of these behaviours has highlighted something about why I wasn't doing it. It's highlighted my lack of confidence and showed me that my confidence is coming from a place of compensation. There's a part of me really wants a big wild crazy beard, but it's actually really hard and scratchy and itchy and feels dirty sometimes having a beard. So you've got days where you like it, days 2-3 days where you don't like it, days where you like it. It's a real challenge, and it throws up and highlights. And what's really highlighted for me doing this this challenge with these other boys is we've got a wee group chat and there's a lot of connection there. And it's still highlighted to me how isolated I can be and how difficult I find being in social settings. And I just named it and tamed it, put it on the group chat, and I was like, oh, really enjoying it, blah, blah, blah. So, and just named it with the guys because there's trust there. And I named it with the boys. And I said, it showed me that I find it really difficult to be in, I'm a bit of a loner, right? So there is that. So like for the first 14 days or whatever, I was amongst a group of people, we were interacting, we were sharing ideas and opinions and listening to one another and validating each other. And then there was a day where I swam over to the other side and just sat at the other side, almost like looking over at them. And it's like, oh, here I go again. I'm back to that wee boy in Braidwood that lived in the farm in the middle of nowhere. Right, well, you can change that. And you swim over and it's really difficult and it's almost like your mind then starts to think, you're watching their body language and you're like, they've all got their back to me, they don't want me to come into this circle. And you just get through that, and then you get in and you're standing there and you're not listening to anything that's getting said, and you're just forcing that out your brain, and you become present and you start to hear what's being said, and each person that you listen to has such value and such importance. So by starting to become mindful is not just a practice where you sit humming cross-legged on the floor. It's about bringing mindfulness and mindsight and starting to see yourself and other people through the eyes of your mind rather than through your your retina and not cortical. And mindfulness, practice more mindfulness. I wish you all a happy, healthy day. Have a fantastic weekend. It's to be absolutely gorgeous weather, and if you get some time to sit in the sun, feel the sun against your skin, allow yourself to sink into you and be with you, because you really do matter, and we're all equal in this wee place, and we're all Jock Tamson's bairns. I wish you all the very best. God bless each of you. Have a great day.